we're all living off premises that no longer exist. There was a time when you went to a company and you worked there your entire life. That was a pretty normal thing to do. My father did that. His father did that. Maybe you have 2 jobs in a lifetime, right? Well, that premise is gone. I mean, that does not exist. It's been baked out of everything over the last 30 or 40 years. For example, so when I came up, it was my expectation that I was going to go to work for one company, maybe 2, and I have a whole career, and those mother companies were going to take care of me my entire life. We all know that premise is gone. And in the first part of the book, there'll be a lot of details regarding how that works, and I'll talk about it a little bit in this format. Today, my son, who's different than my father, who's different than me, will not have one job his entire life. It's his expectation that he's going to, first of all, work for a different culture of company, and he's going to have a different mindset about work, which means that our modern organizations need to really embrace shifts in culture, behavior, norms, symbols, the way they operate. And if I can give you the cleanest example, the reason why my father worked for a company his whole life is because the company wanted him to, and set it up so that he would have that motivation would be fulfilled. Well, that motivation was taken away during the 70s and 80s when downsizing and consolidation and the employee was no longer the most important part of the organization. It was really about profits. Pretty much destroyed anybody's expectation of working for a company for a long period of time. Having said that, we can go back there. But what has to happen is leadership has to change shift the thinking from kind of those old paradigms into these new paradigms, which are going to allow people what they need and motivate them based on what they need. And we'll get into that in some detail.
So do you think this evolution or revolution really has been accelerated by the pandemic? Do you think that the pandemic has caused workers to value being at an organization for a long time less and less? Are we talking about gig workers? Are we going to experience an explosion of gig workers? Because companies during the pandemic had showed that there is no loyalty to the employee.
Yeah. I remember being a 33-year-old professional working in finance, and there was a Fast Company was a pretty popular new magazine at the time, and Fast Company used to talk about the gig economy and the gig worker, right? That was such a new concept at the time. I mean, people have been doing it for forever, but it was bringing forth that this gig economy was becoming a thing. And about a decade ago, I gave a presentation at the Southern Hampshire University, which talked about all the changes that were happening and how things were going to change and accelerate. And it's not me. I'm not a genius here. It's pretty obvious if you look at the facts, the things that are going on, that we're evolving to a place where gig economy, if you will, or contract work or portfolio work or some other concept of work was going to take place in the future. But I thought it was going to be like, in 2040 or 50. I did not. I mean, if you think about it, all our systems are based on this old system, so nothing's really changing. What's happened is the pandemic has forced companies to allow people to work from home, to trust people's productivity on their own, to delegate and expect people to be accountable for their work, right? And not only in this experiment of the pandemic was it just that clear. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of different examples. People working from home because they had to stay home with their kids, people that couldn't travel, people that were sick, right? People that were working in different environments. I know people that traveled the world while they worked. I mean, they just went on a big long vacation and worked every day, and then went to Paris and Rome. I mean, so there's things that happen that. So to answer your question, which is the pandemic has accelerated this exponentially, and now what we're seeing is an embracing of these changes. And so the imperative here is that leaders at all levels and companies and organizational structures and the way we think about work has to change. the quicker people adopt these changes or this way of thinking, the more successful they're going to be in this new economy and this new reality. So yes, the pandemic has accelerated it exponentially.